Well, all right. Welcome to another episode. We are going through the Book of Bible in this new Bible study plan that I've kind of put together. This is version 1.0. I'm sure there'll be adjustments based off of how I felt about it going through and any feedback from you guys. So if you're going through it, awesome. Send me over some comments of your thoughts. If you are just popping in on this episode randomly because you were in the book of Samuel and you found this, you can find in the description a link to my website. Everything I have is free. So this Bible study plan currently, it's up at the top, but it shouldn't be too hard to find. And it's a Bible through the year in a kind of unique way. I have a video at the beginning of this series if you're interested in kind of how I organized it. But would love to have you join me. We are now in the book of 1 Samuel. And we're going to go through that, and then that will be great. So to start off, 1st and 2nd Samuel, or 1 and 2 Samuel, weren't separate originally. It was just one big scroll, or one piece of work. It's just we don't have patience for such long books, so we have broken it up. 1 Samuel starts off. We're picking up right where we left off in Judges. It is still the time of Judges. In fact, Samuel is the judge at the start of this. So Samuel is sort of a judge and he's a prophet. And he's pretty well liked. We'll find out that he has some sons who were not well liked. So it starts off with this character named Hannah. And it's a beautiful story. And I'm not an expert on this, but so she is not able to conceive, and she's praying and weeping about things, and then she gets an answer to her prayer. And so chapter 2 has Hannah's prayer there, and I am told that this kind of outlines a lot of the themes that you will see in the books of Samuel. And then there's a part at the end of 2 Samuel that I think calls back to this. So it's very cool. You can tell that there's definitely a lot of structuring going on here. Growing up, I would have told you if you asked me, hey, Root, who wrote the book of Samuel, 1st and 2nd Samuel? I've been like, Samuel wrote the book of 1st and 2nd Samuel. Except if you're actually reading it, then you find out, wait, Samuel dies like in the middle of this. So no, he could not have written all of this. Doesn't mean he didn't have written parts that were included in this, but he is not the final organizer of this book. He was dead partway through. So it's just kind of like the way that you grew up and think about how the Bible came to be. Sometimes you got to question that, and I think it's healthy to do that. So yeah, let's get into the book of 1 Samuel. So like I said, we're at the end of Judges. People are kind of fed up with the whole Judges thing. They want a king. Now, there have been warnings back in the time of the Exodus. God would be like, don't you ask for kings, you're not going to like it. And so when they call up, hey, they want a king, Samuel's like, listen, you're not going to like it. They're going to take you as slaves. You're going to have to fight their wars on all these things. And they said, still give it to us. We want to be like the other people. And God's like, okay, we'll give them a king. And just to really rub it in, God's like, we're going to give them the king that they want. So that is how Saul is called to be the first king. That is who the people would want as a king. He was tall, he was good looking. And so he's picking out, this is what the Israelites think a good king would be. And then as they'll find out, no, that is not what you do to pick a good king. So the best we can say is Saul kind of starts off decent. There's some weird stories where like they're trying to anoint him and get him started as king, and he's like hiding away. It's like, why is he hiding? That's weird. But he kind of takes on the kingship, wins some battles, and people get behind him. So now he is the king of Israel, and he does a lot of great stuff. He does so as he's ascending. You are introduced to another character, and he's going to be the main character for most of 1st and 2nd Samuel. I believe David is our other character. I think he gets some of the most of the pages of the Bible dedicated to him in terms of story. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that's right. So we're being introduced to a very key figure, and he's definitely mentioned over and over again throughout the rest of the Bible. So as Samuel kind of is hitting his peak, how well he's doing, we are introduced to David. And David, he gets anointed, and then you get the story of David and Goliath, and you're seeing this increase in David's popularity, his anointing, his stature. He becomes a general. At the end of 2 Samuel, get the stories of all these men that fought alongside him. I love that few chapters there. So he's becoming a great leader. As he starts increasing in his reputation, Samuel starts to decrease. It actually says that God allowed an evil spirit onto his heart. So Saul, he definitely starts to decrease in his power, in his sanity, and how we see him, whereas David increases. So 1 Samuel, kind of the bookends, we pick up with Samuel as the high priest, and he's got some son. Sorry, Samuel is not the high priest. I need to correct some of my statements there. Samuel gets dedicated to the high priest, and his name is Eli. I think I've been misspeaking. Eli is the high priest. Samuel gets dedicated to Eli, the high priest, and he becomes the judge. Eli stays the high priest until his old age. He has the two sons that are corrupt, and they all die around the same time. The two sons of Eli take the ark out into battle, and they are killed. And then Eli, hearing the news about them and the ark, falls over and he dies. Samuel has some kids. They're judges, but people don't like Samuel's judges. So even those kids aren't great. Okay, I am sorry. I think I misspoke at the beginning there. I am getting caught up on my podcast episode, so it had been a minute since I had read it. Okay. Moving forward. Once we get to, so David gets called in to serve for Saul. He's playing him music that soothes him, but eventually it's just not working. Saul's jealousy is just too great. And then we move into this period where David is on the run. And these are some of the best moments of David, where he shows restraint in taking Saul's life. He is leading his men well. He's getting along with these other nations. So the second half of 1 Samuel, actually all of David in 1 Samuel is really good. And so as we're kind of reading this as part of the whole Bible, we've been looking for, remember the promise back in Genesis, who's going to defeat evil? David starts to come onto the scene. He's actually picked out by God to be the king. He's the anointed. And so far in the story, you're like, wow, this guy is great. So finally, I think this is one of the high points that we see in the Bible for, could this be the person that is supposed to turn humanity around from this depravity that we've got? And it really seems to be pointing that way. And to highlight that fact, story we're all familiar with, David and Goliath. Goliath, the way that he is described with all of his armor, is very much in terms of serpent language, bronze armor that kind of overlaps like plates or scales. So there's a lot of serpent language surrounding Goliath. And so David is crushing the head of the snake, and at the end he cuts off the head. So even in that, you're sitting there, you know, if you're original reader, you're like, yes, we finally got the person to crush the snake. And Goliath being like one of the last Nephilim, if you go back to Genesis, the giants, so that's connected to Satan and the evil spirits. So all of these stories are making you really think. It's like, okay, David's the one. And kind of jumping ahead into the next book, we know it doesn't really work out, but David does so well outside of this couple of errors that the rest of the Bible, all of the rest of the kings kind of, all right, so here's how the king did. Let's compare. How do you do to David? And there were some that did, it kind of praised him. Hey, he did sort of like David, but nobody down the line does better than whatever David did. So David becomes the the peak that we have to offer in terms of who is going to turn this ship around. But even David falls into temptation and has mistakes. And so again, we are left scratching our head wondering, who is it that's going to save us? And as you go through the rest of the Kings, you go, I don't think that a human is the right person who's going to save us. We're just too flawed. And so as we move out of the sort of the historical, or what the ancient Israelites would have called the prophets part, and you get into the writings, a lot of that reflects, hey, I don't think the person's going to be human. You get these hints of a more godly figure that's going to be the one that defeats evil and restores things. So that's kind of the story so far. We finish with a story. So we finish with Saul and his sons dying in a battle. And you would think David, after all this running away, would be excited. He's dead. I can take my kingship, but actually he mourns properly. So yeah, that picks up in the next book, so I won't read anything on that. But David catches that news and he mourns. He's not rejoicing about it. So that is where we'll pick up in 2 Samuel. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Thanks.